Okay, so picture this. You got a team, right? And they're responsible for keeping some huge operation running.
Right.
It could be a factory, it could be a fleet of trucks, maybe even like a hospital.
Yeah.
Now imagine giving that team a super smart assistant, one that not only knows like every single thing about all the equipment, but can also tell you when something's about to break down and even suggest like the best way to fix it before it actually goes kaput.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the big promise of what we're diving into today, generative AI and how it's being used in computerized maintenance management systems, or CMMS.
You got it. And we've gone through a ton of the latest research and reports to give you a clear picture of what generative AI can really do in the world of maintenance.
Yeah.
Our goal today is to cut through the technical jargon, all the complicated stuff, and give you just the essential understanding of how this technology works and really how it's going to change the way we keep things running.
Yeah, it's like a crash course in the future of maintenance. Okay, so let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What exactly are we talking about when we say CMMS?
CMMS stands for Computerized Maintenance Management Systems.
Right.
And they've been around for a while, actually.
Okay.
Their roots go back to the 80s and 90s when businesses started using basic computer programs just to keep track of maintenance tasks.
Right.
It was a way to get organized, get away from all the paper records.
Yeah, makes sense.
Then, as companies started connecting their computers together, in the 90s with those local networks,
Right.
these CMMS systems could share information across different departments.
Okay, so instead of just like one person having the maintenance log on their desktop, everyone could see it.
Exactly. It was a big step forward.
Yeah.
Then came the internet boom in the 2000s.
Right.
And that really changed the game for CMMS.
Okay, how so?
Well, CMMS became web-based, so you could access them from anywhere, from different sites, even on mobile devices.
Oh, wow.
This made maintenance information way more accessible and really improved how teams could communicate and coordinate their work.
That's huge.
It was.
Yeah.
And today, the most advanced CMMS systems are in the cloud,
Okay.
which offers even more flexibility and power.
Makes sense.
Better mobile access, more sophisticated features, quicker setup and updates,
Oh.
enhanced data security. It's all about taking advantage of digital tools
Yeah.
to manage assets and maintenance as efficiently as possible
Right.
in this, hyper-connected world we live in.
Yeah, so we've come a long way from those simple programs to these sophisticated platforms.
We have.
Okay, so where does this whole generative AI thing come in?
Well, generative AI is a really fascinating branch of artificial intelligence.
Okay.
It's different from traditional AI. You see, traditional AI is mainly designed to analyze data that already exists and find patterns.
Right.
But generative AI can create new content.
So it's not just telling us what happened, it can actually do things.
Exactly. It's like a super smart, imagine a parrot that has read millions of documents.
Yeah.
And can now create its own sentences and even stories based on all the patterns it's learned.
That's wild.
In the case of CMMS, generative AI learns from huge amounts of maintenance data
Okay.
to create new insights and automate tasks,
Right.
which ultimately makes maintenance operations much more efficient.
So we've got these evolved CMMS systems, and now we're adding this creative AI to the mix.
Right.
How does that actually change what a CMMS can do for a maintenance team?
Okay, so one very practical way is through something called search intent grouping.
Okay. Search intent grouping.
Yeah, so imagine a technician out in the field working on a machine that's giving them trouble. They might try to describe the problem in the CMMS, on their tablet or whatever they're using.
Right.
Now, a basic search would just look for those exact words.
Okay.
But generative AI is way smarter.
Right.
It can actually analyze what the technician means by the words and phrases they use, not just the exact words themselves. So even if the technician isn't super clear, maybe one says machine not working and another says motor humming loudly then stopped.
Right.
Generative AI can understand that they're probably talking about the same underlying problem.
Okay.
And it can group these similar searches together and then quickly provide the most relevant information from the system's knowledge base.
Oh, that's great. So it's like the system actually understands what you mean to ask, even if you don't say it perfectly.
Exactly. It saves a ton of time and frustration.
Yeah, I could see that.
So another way generative AI enhances CMMS is by helping to organize all the information that's stored in there.
Okay, so all those manuals and logs and stuff?
Yeah, all that can be a lot to sift through.
Right.
But generative AI can help with something called content structuring and meta descriptions.
Okay.
It can suggest logical ways to organize all that content, kind of like creating a really detailed table table of contents.
Hmm.
It can even automatically create meta descriptions, those short summaries that you see in online search results. So this makes it way easier for anyone using the CMMS to find exactly what they need.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like having a super efficient librarian for all your maintenance knowledge.
Right, and it probably helps the system's SEO too, right?
Exactly. Search engine optimization, it makes it easier to find information within the system itself.
So better organization and a smarter search function.
Right.
That could save so much time.
Absolutely.
So how does all this technology actually impact the work itself, actually fixing things part?
Well, that's where things get really interesting when we talk about predictive maintenance and asset health.
Okay.
You see, traditional CMMS often use data from sensors, things like vibration or temperature readings,
Right.
to predict when a piece of equipment might fail.
Okay.
But generative AI takes us to a whole new level.
How so?
Well, it can look at a much wider range of data, and it can connect those sensor readings with information from other operational systems.
Okay.
So it can see the bigger picture and make more accurate predictions about potential equipment failures. Wow.
And this allows for proactive maintenance, fixing or replacing things before they break down unexpectedly.
Well, that's huge.
It minimizes downtime and saves a lot of money.
So instead of just saying this part is acting weird,
Right.
it's looking at all sorts of other data to make a much more informed prediction.
Exactly.
Wow, what about all the paperwork that comes with maintenance? All the documents and stuff.
Yes. Well, generative AI can help with that too.
Okay.
It's called document analysis and key term identification.
Okay.
So think about those long legal contracts for service agreements,
Right.
or those super detailed technical manuals for specialized equipment.
Yeah.
Generative AI can read through those documents and automatically identify the important terms and clauses
Oh, wow.
and critical requirements.
So it's like having a lawyer and an engineer all in one.
Kind of. It helps to make sure that maintenance teams are aware of their obligations, helps with compliance,
Right.
and it can prevent costly misunderstandings or errors down the line. That sounds like a game changer for anyone who's ever had to deal with compliance headaches.
It can be.
And you mentioned earlier that generative AI can also automate tasks, right?
Absolutely.
So what kind of tasks are we talking about?
Well, things like writing basic code for system integrations,
Okay.
debugging minor software glitches, and even creating routine documentation.
Huh.
This frees up the skilled maintenance professionals to focus on the more complex stuff.
Right. So the AI is handling the repetitive tasks, and the humans are doing what they do best.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've seen all these ways that generative AI can make CMMS more powerful.
Right.
How is this actually being used in the real world?
Well, one key application is in predictive maintenance and demand forecasting.
Okay, we talked about predicting when equipment might fail,
Right.
but what about demand forecasting?
Well, by accurately predicting failures, the CMMS can also predict which spare parts will be needed.
Ah,
So this allows organizations to order the right parts at the right time,
all
a
right.
much more intelligent way to manage inventory.
So you avoid both the downtime of waiting for part
Right.
and the expense of having too much stock just sitting around.
Exactly.
So it's not just about fixing things, it's about having what you need when you need it.
Precisely.
What are some other real-world applications?
Another important one is process optimization and automation.
Okay.
So generative AI can actually analyze existing workflows and find areas where things could be done more efficiently.
Okay.
It can help automate the planning and scheduling of maintenance tasks,
Right.
improve communication between different teams,
Yeah.
and even digitize paperwork.
So it's like breaking down those silos that can sometimes exist between different departments.
Exactly. It's about streamlining the whole process.
I like it. What about the user experience?
Well, that's another area where generative AI can make a big difference.
Okay, how so?
Well, some older CMMS interfaces can be kind of clunky and hard to use.
Yeah, I can see that.
But generative AI can help create interfaces that are much more user-friendly
Okay.
and personalized.
Right.
It can also enable natural language processing, which means users could potentially interact with the system more conversationally.
Oh,
So they could just ask questions in plain language and get the information they need.
That's cool.
This can be especially appealing to younger technicians who are used to using technology in a more intuitive way.
Right.
They grew up with smartphones and all that.
Yeah, so if the tools are easier to use, people are more likely to use them effectively.
Exactly.
What about training new maintenance staff?
That's another really interesting application.
Okay.
So generative AI can actually be used to create realistic training simulations.
Hmm.
and personalized learning resources
Right.
to help new and existing maintenance teams learn new
So
skills.
it's like a virtual mentor?
In a way, it can adapt to each individual's learning pace
Wow.
and provide targeted feedback, which makes the training process much more efficient and effective.
That's awesome. And these core capabilities of generative AI aren't limited to CMSS, right?
Not at all. We're seeing similar applications in other industries as well.
Like where?
Well, in the legal field, for example,
Okay.
AI is being used to help with document management,
Okay.
kind of like how it's used to organize maintenance documents.
Right.
And in manufacturing, industrial AI is being used to optimize production lines.
So it's a pretty versatile technology.
It is.
Okay, so zooming out a bit, why should someone who's involved in keeping things running smoothly care about all this?
It's all about the benefits.
Okay, what are some of the key benefits?
One of the most significant is knowledge synthesis and decision making.
Okay.
So generative AI can analyze all that data that's in a CMMS
Right.
and data from other connected systems
Okay.
to identify trends and generate insights that lead to better decisions.
So it's not just about having more data, it's about making sense of it.
Exactly, and using that knowledge to make smarter choices.
Gotcha.
Then there's the automation of processes.
Right, less time spent on the mundane stuff.
Right. And the time and resource savings from automating those routine tasks are huge.
Correct.
Things like scheduling, generating reports, and even some initial diagnostics.
Yeah.
This frees up your skilled maintenance teams to focus on the more complex stuff,
Right.
the things that really require their expertise.
So more time for the critical stuff, less time wasted on paperwork.
Precisely.
Okay, what else?
Well, generative AI also enables enhanced innovation and customization.
Okay.
It can help organizations create maintenance plans and strategies that are tailored to their specific needs. Their unique assets, their particular operating environment, their risk tolerance.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
No, it's much more personalized.
I like it. What about the bottom line?
Well, the long-term financial benefits are significant.
Okay.
Sure, there might be some upfront costs to implement these technologies,
Right.
but the increased efficiency, the reduced downtime, the better management of resources,
Yeah.
and fewer equipment failures all lead to big cost savings over time.
So it's an investment that pays off in the long run.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about all these potential benefits,
Right.
but are there any challenges that come with integrating generative AI into a CMMS?
Of course, anytime you have a major technological shift, there are going to be some challenges.
Right.
One important one is the economic and workforce transition.
Okay.
So as generative AI starts taking on more tasks, there are likely to be some changes in the types of jobs that are needed. And the existing workforce will need to develop new skills.
Right.
So organizations need to be proactive in thinking about training and upskilling their employees.
So it's not about replacing people, it's about helping them adapt to the new landscape.
Exactly.
What are the challenges are there?
Well, another big one is data security and privacy.
Okay.
Generative AI relies on access to a lot of data,
Right.
and some of that data can be very sensitive.
So how do you make sure it's protected?
Well, organizations need to have really strong data governance practices in place, and they need to make sure they're complying with all the relevant regulations.
Yeah, that makes sense. What else?
Another challenge is integration and compatibility.
Okay.
So integrating a new AI-powered CMMS or AI tools into existing systems,
Right.
especially older legacy systems, can be pretty complex.
Yeah.
So companies need to make sure that these different systems can talk to each other and work together smoothly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it can cause disruptions and prevent them from getting the full benefits of the technology.
So getting different software systems to play nice together can be a challenge.
It can.
You mentioned earlier that generative AI can really enhance data analysis.
Yes.
But isn't limited data visibility and analytics already a problem for a lot of organizations?
It is, and that's something that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
So for generative AI to be truly effective, companies need to make sure they have good quality data that's easily accessible.
So the AI can help you get more out of your data.
Right.
But you need to have good data to begin with.
Exactly.
Are there any other challenges?
One more that's important is organizational agility.
Okay.
So to really take advantage of generative AI, companies need to be flexible and adaptable, in their structures and processes.
Okay.
If they're too rigid, it can hinder the adoption and implementation of these new technologies.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's also about the organizational culture.
Exactly.
So looking ahead, what does the future hold for generative AI in CMMS?
Well, the predictions are pretty exciting.
Okay.
The economic impact alone is expected to be huge.
How huge are we talking?
By 2030, some estimates say it could contribute trillions of dollars to the global economy,
Wow.
and it's growing really fast.
So companies that adopt it early will have a big advantage.
It seems likely.
What about the impact on jobs?
Well, there's going to be significant workforce transformation.
Okay.
It's estimated that a lot of current work activities could be automated in the coming years. And this isn't just limited to routine tasks.
Really?
It's expected to impact more knowledge-based roles as well.
So it's a really fundamental shift in the nature of work.
It is, and it has big implications for education training and how we think about the future of work in general.
And when is this all supposed to happen?
Well, the midpoint of this transition is estimated to be around the mid-2040s.
Okay, so we've got some time, but not a ton of time.
Right.
Where are we seeing the most adoption of generative AI right now?
North America is definitely leading the way.
All right.
And the rapid adoption here is already reshaping industries. And the amount of investment that's going into this technology shows that people really believe in its potential.
Okay.
And that includes in the maintenance management space.
It sounds like we're on the cusp of a really big change.
We are, and with that comes a lot of challenges and considerations for businesses and policymakers.
Like what?
Well, we need to think about how to deploy these technologies responsibly.
Right.
How to support the workforce through this transition.
Yeah.
And what the broader economic impact is going to be.
That's a lot to think about.
It is, but it's also incredibly exciting.
Okay, so to wrap things up, what's the key takeaway for someone who's thinking about generative AI in their CMMS operations?
The main point is that generative AI has the potential to revolutionize maintenance operations.
Okay.
It can make them smarter, more efficient, and more user-friendly.
Right.
It's about moving from reactive maintenance to proactive maintenance.
I like it.
And it's about empowering maintenance teams with the tools and insights they need to keep things running smoothly.
It really does sound like the future of maintenance.
It does.
So one last question for our listeners.
Okay.
Think about your current maintenance processes. What aspects do you think could be most transformed by the kind of intelligent automation we've been talking about?
That's a great question.
And what steps could you take to start preparing for this future?
Yeah. It's something worth thinking about.
It really is. And just a reminder that all of this information is based on the latest research and reports on generative AI and CMS.
It's a fast-moving field.
It is, so keep exploring and see how these advancements might apply to your own situation.
It's worth it.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.